Victor.
And I'm Linda Zayas Palmer.
And this is Arcane Mark. Hello everyone! Welcome to Arcane Mark. We are not in our usual place, so the lighting is, well, what it is. Here we are to talk about realism and verisimilitude in games. I'm using the scare quotes here very liberally because of the fact...
A dragon appears!
Well, because of the fact that even that dragon is often used as a sort of ad absurdum argument to try to dismiss the very real opinions and feelings that people have when they try to talk about why realism or verisimilitude issues are causing them issues. Now, we want to cover what they really mean and how you as a GM can handle the sort of clashing and almost paradoxical constraints of trying to put realism into a game about dragons. So first, sometimes when a player says, okay, this doesn't work for me, this shattered my verisimilitude, it's very easy to say, like, dismissively and be like, oh, it shatters your puny little verisimilitude in a game where I shoot out lightning from my hands when I chant in Latin, and where a dragon can somehow lift off the ground with the amount of weight that it has with its wings and then breathe fireballs. And that's very dismissive, but it's ultimately just oversimplifying and very inaccurate to the point of what people are feeling when they tell you that something breaks their verisimilitude or that it doesn't work from a realism perspective.
So let's talk about some of the things that people are talking about when they are saying that something is not fitting with their sense of verisimilitude.
To be fair, they might not know why. In fact, a lot of people don't necessarily know why. Something just feels off.
Yeah, but...
something feels wrong to them. But here's the thing. The dragon and the magic spell issues are just non-issues. They're a non sequitur that's being disguised as a way to just dismiss this question right off of the bat. Because even if you accept that you're in a world where the fantasy logic, the fantasy physics, there's some kind of weird, like, magical energy that's running through the world, that dragons use that magic to somehow fly, you use that magic to somehow cast spells, there's still, like, a whole lot of game abstractions that even the people who say that they want more verisimilitude or realism in their games have probably accepted without even questioning it or thinking about it in any way. And you can see some of those in the little pictures that were on the thumbnail.
So we can talk about some of the things that they probably don't necessarily mean, as well as some of the things that they are more likely to be going for when they're asking for verisimilitude in a game.
And really, the truth is, there isn't something that they're more likely to be going for when they ask about it in the game. And that's what we'll get to later on in the episode.
There's a few categories of types of things they could be going for.
Perhaps. But the most important thing, and the truth that we're talking about when we say in the episode that they aren't what you think, is that there is not a single answer that you can give to this question, and that it varies from person to person depending on the experiences of the person. But there are some things that almost no one actually is talking about. And there are also things that when someone insists in your group and they say, no, I want full realism on everything, you can point out and be like, do you though? Do you really? Because, and then for example, let's say you're playing Dungeons & Dragons, Pathfinder, or any other game that has a grid-based combat. 5-foot squares?
Really? Only one person can fit in a 5-foot square at the same time?
That is actually more unbelievable than dragons or shooting lightning bolts out of your hands, because at least those have a fantasy explanation. There's not like an explanation that's like the ley lines of the world have segmented the entire world into 5-foot by 5-foot squares based on the energy flow. No, there is no explanation. It just says that. And if you think, well, no, but that's about how much space you would need to swing your sword, and it's really still a pretty constricted space.
What about if you're doing unarmed combat?
Well, I don't even care. Okay? Go out somewhere onto the street, somewhere that you are allowed to do this. Take a piece of chalk and a measuring tape.
Yes.
And draw a 5-foot by 5-foot square. I'm just asking you to do this, please, just for your own edification. I assure you that it is bigger than you think that it is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? It is very big. Like, the idea that you can actually stop someone if you're, like, a human-sized, like, wizard or someone who's not, like, even
Mm-hmm.
a trained combatant, or even just a peasant in many D&D games,
Yeah.
like, an untrained peasant being in that square, you would have to roll a special ability
Yeah.
to move through the square. The idea that you can stop
Mm-hmm.
some other human from moving through that space is
Yeah.
automatically, unless they do a special maneuver, is preposterous.
Like the idea, I mean, you can also think about it with your arms too, right? It's like that somebody could never get within your arm's reach ever.
Absolutely. Then there are other things that we also had in the thumb, like going to the bathroom. Okay? Realistically, you need to go to the bathroom. There are other biological functions, and there's also sort of mental functions. We talk on this channel about the basement sword wizard sometime, the player who is just like, during every minute of every day that I am not on an adventure, I am crafting swords in my basement. I'm not asleep, so I could be crafting swords in my basement. And to the point that they are so exploitative of themselves that they make, like, the most evil corporate overlord from the
Yes.
real world look like they're, like, a kind and caring,
My
compassionate
character
parent.
would not waste any single minute on recreation.
Or
I
eating.
only technically need 4 hours of sleep according to this system.
I could sleep for 4 hours and I can craft magic weapons for 20 hours straight. I'll have someone just give me, like,
I'll put on a
food.
ring of sustenance.
Yes, I'll put on
and
a
then-
ring of sustenance, so I only have to sleep 2 hours and I don't need the experience of eating
Yes.
or drinking. I never have to stop. And it's like, actually, I've met at least one person who did do that and was also big on verisimilitude.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it's not really true in real life that they were able to keep that much focus, or really that anyone could.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to do here is not be like, well, I've come up with a better way. Lynn and I have come up with a better way than the dragon and the lightning bolt magic spell argument to try to claim that people who want verisimilitude are wrong-headed or that their feelings are wrong. No. What we're trying to say here is that these people have real feelings. They do want realism or verisimilitude or what they see or feel to be that way. But there's a whole lot of things that they are just allowing to get past them. Often, like, eating, as we talked about before.
It's also like
sleeping,
anything
the
that whenever
bathroom.
you see on a TV show, right? That, you know, how often do you see on a TV show people are like, "Welp, it seems that I ran out of tomatoes for the dinner I was going to make tonight. I guess I have to go to the grocery store." Like, this is the kind of thing that is not interesting for stories, so you're not going to see it being focused on in your game or your show or your book or whatever.
There are also things that television shows and movies learned over the course of time to remove, that they used to include. The games also often skip past, and they discovered in TV shows and movies it didn't harm people's senses of realism or verisimilitude. For instance, old school TV shows, you'll often see people, like, traveling or arriving onto the scene of the place that they're going to, whereas in newer ones, it'll cut to them being there. It'll cut the scene, there'll be some kind of transition, it may even go to a B-plot, and you see other characters doing something for a second, and when it cuts back to the other characters, they're immediately in the place.
Yes.
You won't see them, like, go to the door and be let in, and be, oh, hello there, Mrs. Smith.
Or like Koja was talking about here on TV shows, no one ever locks their doors. People just walk in. You're not going to see someone, like, unless it's actually important to the story and they're trying to raise the tension of, like, what's going on inside of this house.
Even if it was locked, it'll cut to it having already been opened at that point to save time to change and improve the flow. So, where are we getting at? What is the secret of verisimilitude and realism? How do you make your games work for those players who are running into issues and saying that this is shattering their feelings? Well, the key to it is they are just that. They are feelings, and they are individual to a person. They are often based on that person's own knowledge and expertise, though not always. So if you have someone who is a brilliant chemist in your game, and they're the type of person who is so into it that if things really violate that, it just feels off to them, you might need to do things differently with, like, a black dragon's acid breath and how it interacts with certain metals, just because that's what the chemists who are in your game feel. We have a bunch of physicists in our game, and they actually don't care if we do things that are really against the laws of physics. Mostly they're quantum physicists, as they remind us. So when we're doing weird things with like fluid dynamics or like gravitation or things like that, they're like, this isn't our specialty anyway. We don't care. But
a lot of times
you could have a physicist who really does care, and it's just like, look, I'm a physicist. This is gonna break my verisimilitude. Whereas 99.999% of players wouldn't even understand physics enough to have a problem with the thing that, say, this physicist player did.
And another thing, too, that people are sometimes looking for with verisimilitude is a sense of grounding in the rules of the world so that they can follow the logic of the world and understand what's going on.
That's 100% correct.
That's a big category there.
And that can be a type of verisimilitude or, quote, realism that applies to fantasy logic as well. And when people talk about, like, hard versus soft fantasy and magic systems, honestly, when they're doing that, they're usually just trying to insult the ones that they're calling soft fantasy or magic systems and praise the ones that they're calling hard fantasy or magic systems for being more consistent. But in reality, what matters is that it's consistent and that therefore you can kind of predict what's going to be possible or going to happen based on the magic system. And you don't have something that's kind of like trashy and feels like it's being pulled out of their butt by, let's say, an author who's also just a pretty nasty person who's just like, I've invented time traveling just because I felt like it for this thing, and then we banned it right after that because I realized it screwed everything up, and yeah, okay, I just make things up randomly and there's no consistency. Like, that can be a problem both for the readers and especially for players in a game who are trying to decide what their character is going to do. They don't know if you're going to create a new type of magic that was never defined, didn't make any sense with what existed before, and that is immediately banned afterwards or not.
Yeah. Or sometimes what you'll have is something where it's almost realistic, but then it's realistic enough that then there's kind of the wait, but then why doesn't it go all the way into this logical step? Why do you have, something that is called the same exact thing as a thing on Earth and is the same in these 5 ways, but the 6th way it's not the same?
Exactly.
Is that just because, like, the people who wrote the RPG book, like, had less knowledge than the expert about what was going on, or is there actually a thing in the story that justifies it?
Other things that people feel are verisimilitude hit could really just be something about inconsistent rules in the game as well. Like, let's say that you're thinking about these objects that are clearly flammable being able to be lit on fire by, like, various fire effects, but as it turns out, the rules of the game just have like a comma separated list of 10 different fire effects that they say can light things on fire, and they never said the fire snake spell in there. So when the fire snake spell, which didn't exist when the game was first created, I'm just making up a fake game here, was added, due to the rules of burning things, fire snake could not burn flammable objects because it wasn't one of the 10 spells that was listed initially. It was poorly future proofed, and this could cause players to claim, wait a minute, this feels really weird that this fire snake, this explosive fire snake doesn't burn anything, and yet all these other fire spells do. I don't get it. Or they tried to do the interaction, it didn't work, and you're like, well, technically, if you're looking in the book, it says fireball, firebolt, fire blast, fire blaze, incendiary bushes, and these other 5 spells all light it, but didn't say fire snake did.
Yeah. Or sometimes you'll have a world that might introduce, like, in this world I've decided that they have these, these particular things from history, and then also they have cell phones, but then it's like, well, we don't actually have proper communication, or like we have teleportation magic, but like it doesn't actually affect anything that we have teleportation magic.
We have cheap teleportation magic that can teleport an infinite amount, but yet we still have these merchants paying way more money than that to go on these wagons that are getting attacked by bandits. It's like, why though?
Yeah.
Why not teleport it?
Where they bring, I can see that definitely, like, in settings that are pulling in things from different time periods. And then it's like, wait, but there's a reason these never coexisted.
So, basically, the cheat code to fixing this issue for if you have a player who is butting their heads with verisimilitude or realism are the things that they're saying is A, rules and world logic consistency within your world. Make sure that they can. This is a type of player who probably is actually, in some ways, a really good player, even though you might find it annoying that they keep talking about verisimilitude or realism, because they're really trying to get into your world, get their head into it, and think like their character about logical cause and effect. And so try to make your world a little more consistent in cause and effect, even though that doesn't make it real or verisimilitudinous. And secondly, understand that person's expertise and what strikes them as jarring. What they're really saying is not that your game about fantasy wizards shooting fireballs is real, or that your game that maybe it was in a realistic fiction set in a historical time period and had no fantasy in it was fake or unreal. What they're really saying is that it's jarring. It pulls them out of the narrative and the game due to some weird idiosyncrasy that is happening.
And if your players, if you're in a game and your player tries to set something on fire with Fire Snake, and Fire Snake came out in, the great analogs of Flame, the 70th Splat book for this game, and it wasn't listed, let Fire Snake work. Like, think about, think about sort of those natural consequences rather than being stuck in like exactly rules as written. Especially when that's like an area that your players are really focused on.
So translate it. Anytime you hear them say, your game doesn't have realism, and instead of taking it as like a personal offense of them saying you did badly or you're not doing well as a GM at portraying things, take it to mean that what they're really saying is I feel something is off. And that's partially them, and maybe partially you, and maybe partially the rules or the setting. It's a combination of factors that are kind of chafing them, okay? So the way you get around that, they might not know, right? They may tell you some symptom, just like with many of the other topics we discuss on this channel, and it turns out that's not really what's causing the problem.
It's one example of an issue, but it's not like... It doesn't necessarily mean that, if you fix the issue with Fire Snake, that's going to change everything about realism in your world.
Exactly. So, but just trying to figure out what's feeling off to them. Ask them what would have felt right in that situation. And look, that doesn't mean you have to play that as the ruling. In fact, especially if someone who has, quote, realism or verisimilitude issues, that suspiciously always the thing that would feel right is something that was hugely advantageous to them.
I never like try to limit what I'm doing with my turn, but suddenly it's only realistic if I get to do 3 times as many actions on a turn as anyone else, because that's realistic.
Realistically, with the temperature that the book says that Fire Snake is, it should boil off the flesh and fat from the bones of the creatures, instantly killing them.
Yes.
It doesn't feel real if it doesn't do that with no saving throw.
Yes, my spell is called Dynamite Boom, and realistically, even though it's a first level spell, it's not as destructive as the amount of dynamite that it describes in the spell, and therefore...
I know exactly how much this dynamite would be.
I've calculated it.
It's like, my ability for my inventor is called Megaton Hammer. Now, I know how much a megaton is in terms of a bomb. I'm telling you right now, it doesn't feel realistic that my megaton hammer just did a few extra D12s. It should have leveled this entire city block. So, obviously, you don't have to do that, all right? But you can also find another compromise. For instance, with the megaton hammer, if it's really a problem. And by the way, this is real. Like, I made an ability called Megaton Hammer, and one person was... A lot of people liked it, but one person was like, as a physicist, this name really caused me issues because it's not really a megaton. So for them, the answer is not to say, well, now it deals a megaton of destructive power.
Maybe giant hammer.
To not call it Megaton Hammer for that person. For that person, they can call it like Omega Hammer.
Yeah.
Right? Or Mega Hammer. Without the ton. Just Mega Hammer. There's no problem with Mega Hammer. You can figure out an answer on the other side that will resolve for anyone. I'm sure that person would have been fine. I think I even told them they could call it Mega Hammer. And I was like, I asked other playtesters, do we all want Mega Hammer? Other people are like, no, we like Megaton better. So...
Yeah, I mean, renaming and reflavoring is often a good solution for those types of things, because you can find another way to describe what's going on while maintaining the underlying mechanics.
Exactly. So there's always a way to help deal with it, even if you don't have even if you don't want to change the ruling to be vastly in their favor, or as Kojo mentions in chat, if you're in an organized play scenario, you can't change the rulings for sure. So you have to find a way to change the person's perspective, or just be like, look, it's organized play, we have to do it this way, you're gonna have to deal with the realism. But there might be a way to help them think of their perspective as
poke
being
fun
different.
at it, like, oh haha, yeah, this
You can be
this
like,
is not realistic.
yup, we're just gonna do it a little bit unrealistic today. It'll be kind of for humor. And see if they're okay with that. Now, if it's still like, no, this is chafing, this is like pulling me out of the game, you might find a different way to describe it, even though you haven't changed the mechanics. Even in organized play, it's okay to find a different way to describe things. You can go even further beyond that if somebody is just like, if the word spider is mentioned at the table, I will literally run away from the table. I'm not saying figuratively, but literally, please call it a web shooting lizard that has the arachnid trait, if necessary, for somebody who has a special ability against arachnids, but is a lizard. When being described, you're allowed to do that. So if you're allowed to do that, you definitely, you're explicitly allowed to do that in the guide. So if you're allowed to do that, you're definitely allowed to make smaller amounts of changes to the way you describe things to help somebody who's having other sorts of realism issues that are not as intense as, say, arachnophobia.
Oh, hi.
There we go. So basically, what it all comes down to is, when you hear verisimilitude or realism, what they're really saying is just, I don't feel right. Something doesn't feel right. So it's not the time to make fun of that player and say it's a fantasy game, we wiggle our fingers and cast spells. Don't dismiss it. That also doesn't mean that you have to do exactly whatever they think is the right thing to do at that moment. Talk to the player, figure out what their issues are, figure out what's really not working for them, find a compromise, and then make sure that that doesn't mess up with any of the other players.
I would also say, consider the duration of the game that you're playing as well as the tone. Because if you're doing, some wacky one-shot in a more comedic game, then it's a lot easier to just be like, yeah, that thing that totally breaks the game in half, that's hilarious, let's go for it. We don't need to worry about we don't need to worry about whether it's going to be an issue that, you're doing this 3 sessions in a row and defeating the encounter, because it's awesome that you defeated this climactic encounter in this way.
Absolutely. So when you use these techniques, you're going to find that this issue, which pops up a lot in tabletop RPG circles and sometimes is seen as a way to like draw a line or even go against each other. I've even seen professionals kind of sniff and dismiss this issue. There's also people who split up gamers into different types and have like the simulationists as the one who care about this.
But people are going to care about it in different aspects.
Yeah, the reality is all of the ways of splitting up gamers are oversimplifications, and they're not right. You can find someone who you might think is a classic narrativist or gamist in the gamist narrativist simulation spectrum who still have a verisimilitude issue on one particular point.
Because that's what they care about,
It's just a part of them. Or you can find someone who has what seems to be a verisimilitude issue to others, but is actually a gamist issue to them. Here's a good example. Diagonals? Do you know what I really don't like? Is when diagonals are 1-to-1. Okay? It's not a verisimilitude issue, even though, yes, it does mean you can run like one and square root of 2 times faster if you run on a diagonal. There's actually a major gamist issue with it because of the fact that you can just run around obstacles that are placed onto the battlefield and completely ignore them unless they are as wide as they are far away from you. And even then, they barely do anything. You just run around unless they completely fill the entire corridor. If you're in a wide open area, which many maps are, it's just like, yeah, cool. I just created a 30-foot wide death zone that you die if you enter. Okay, cool. I skirt around it. I go exactly as
what
fast.
Was that? What was that? It was like Tales of. Was it like Tales of Zestiria or one of those video games that had it, and then you would even see it on the map where if you ran
the
diagonally, game continued to be straight, then you'd move at one rate, and if you ran with the game considered to be diagonally, you'd outrun everything because of the way that it worked.
That is correct, although it wasn't based on a grid, but it was based on the fact that it did, if you were pressing 2 directions on a diagonal, it gave you square root of 2 progression. Didn't give you double, but square root of 2 progression. And all of the monsters in the game had a radius that they would not leave, but they were slightly faster than you.
Yes.
So if you weren't quick on the draw, you couldn't get out of their radius, except if you were going square root of 2 times faster than when you should have been. You were faster than them, so they could never catch you, and you would never get attacked by anything.
And then that made me think of games that do that kind of diagonal, too, because it's like, oh, that's what it would look like. Because, like, if you run straight,
and Dustin pointed out EverQuest had the same thing. Actually, a lot of early computer games had the same issue as well.
I was chuckling before about Dustin saying someone reset the day since we recommended you approach this issue during session 0. So.
Yes. Well, that's the thing. The problem with this one is, guys, it's actually hard to
You're not going to be able
this
to
issue during session 0 because I'm telling you this right now, most people don't realize the thing that's going to get them on Realism during session 0.
I really care a lot about historical medieval weaponry, and therefore
they're not going to know that, like, oh, in Dungeons & Dragons it says Black Dragon Breath is nitric acid, but I want to tell you that the way that interacts with silver is not what you think. Because they're not going to think of that until it actually comes up. This is something that it would be nice to figure it out during session 0. You even can ask in case someone figured something out about this in a previous game, but like 80% of the time, it's going to be something you couldn't predict in session 0.
There may be a situation where it's like, oh yeah, we previously had this house rule to handle XYZ. It was like, oh yeah, okay, you're used to playing with this house rule, but otherwise, yeah, you're probably not going to know.
Absolutely. So basically, just kind of find a happy medium, and when something comes up, try to think of it not as like an obstacle or like a disagreement where this person is coming against you, even if it sounds like an attack, but is instead they are expressing a feeling that they had, and you're trying to find a compromise that will allow you to express the game you want to tell, and maybe not get into too many details on things that you don't even maybe understand as well as they do, while still not causing them whatever that particular sort of emotional chafing that they get when they feel this sense of unease.
Or like the sense that, I don't really know what's going on in this game because I can't really have a model of what's going to happen, so whatever, like I'll just step back and let other people play until it makes sense.
100%.
Yeah, I was thinking about what else we had on the thumbnail, because I don't think we talked about, like, because some of the one of the ones that things I had on the thumbnail was like the 2 people talking to each other in different languages, because sometimes, and a lot of times when games steer away from verisimilitude or like actually being realistic, it's a conscious choice to avoid things that are going to be inconvenient, like to make it easier for characters to communicate with each other, or to make it so that you're not going to have to track all sorts of fiddly little things that are going to take a lot of time at the table.
Absolutely. That's similar to some of the other ones about like 5-foot squares or a simplification. It makes it easier to play, so very few people actually have a thing where the existence of 5-foot squares ruins their ability to get immersion in the game. It turns out sometimes if it's baked enough into the rules, the fundamental rules of the game, people can deal with it more easily. And that actually may mean that playing a different game system can help you with certain immersion issues too. There's another thing on our bingo card for Arcade Mark is that sometimes you want to try a different game system because your game system isn't the right one.
I would be curious what like Arcade Mark bingo would look like. What would you consider?
Session 0 is like the free space.
Yeah, but there's going to be at least some things that we constantly say that we're not aware of.
Oh yeah, I don't know. tell us in the comments.
What else is on Arcade
Tell
Mark
us in the
Bingo?
comments what below this episode what is in the Arcade Mark Bingo
I'm also
card.
curious between what Dustin and Alex have been saying here. The answer is to give the party a pipe fuss mascot who constantly points out the verisimilitude problems before the players can. This feels very oddly specific.
I mean, I'm just saying that overall the strategy of like sort of
did you literally have that?
The strategy of defanging an issue by bringing it up yourself first is one that is known in the real world, like even in things like politics or other stuff like that, as a strategy people sometimes use, where it's like you bring it up, you admit it, you tell your own cast on it before it gets brought up by someone else in a way that you don't want. And that Pipe Fox example is actually a in-game way of using that same tactic. So, basically, that is what we're getting at here. I think we've covered everything that we wanted to say about the truth about realism and verisimilitude and why they aren't what a lot of people think when they either dismiss it or buy in deeply to the idea of this simulationist player who only wants all verisimilitude all the time. No, it's a specific thing that a specific person wants that's going to be different from everyone else. So, if you like these kind of topics and want to hear us give advice and give our takes on things, please like and subscribe, or even join us if you'd like to support us. And for our final thing here on this episode, you can vote for our next exciting Tuesday episode.
I saw
of I saw a vote for 5.
5 in there.
Yeah, so...
But it said 5 and then said something else after it?
I saw what it said. It said that we could pick because 5 has multiple options.
So
1 is build a hazard workshop, which we can make a hazard on the stream. 2 is going to be a Q&A. 3 is GM tools. I don't know. 4 is Arcade Mark Plays, where we'll play a game on here. And 5 is Ancestry Guide to one of the Battlezoo ancestries, which we
So it was Kojo the one who voted before?
No, 5? It was Math Guy Dave from the Haunted Mansion in Disney World.
Oh, that was what Haunted Mansion was. It was literally...
He said from the Haunted Mansion, then he said you guys pick the ancestry.
Okay. I was confused because I was thinking Haunted Mansion. Is that a vote for Dungeon?
No, that's the ride he was on in Disney World because he said he wasn't going to be able to make the episode because he is in Disney World.
Okay. I'm not sure.
All right. So, we've got 1 vote for Hazard Workshop, 1 vote for, I don't know, and 2 votes for Ancestry Guide for a Battlezoo Ancestry, which we can have a vote. We will have a poll on our Discord, which is at, let's see, that is at tiny.cc/arcade.
Oh, we have another vote for 5. I think 5's going to take it.
All right, we're doing it.
Yes, legally distinct mind.
And Nin wants to talk about cerebrophages. Which are totally not mind flayers. They are brain eaters. Cerebrophages. They have nautilus heads. That's not a squid head. It is a nautilus.
You here at Battlezoo are experts in things that are totally not other things.
I'm just telling you that when it comes to a nautilus, okay, and this is a very important distinction that I want to make sure that I get right for you. So I'm even going to look it up just to make sure. When it comes to a nautilus, they are in the subclass Nautiloidea and the order Nautilida, right? Okay? Whereas when it comes to a squid, right? Now, yes, they're both cephalopods, but there's a lot of cephalopods in the world. But when it comes to a squid is not even in those. Like, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, right? There's 7. Okay? Subclass in the third... so the majority of those taxonomy things are different between a nautilus and a squid.
Technically correct is the best kind.
The best kind of correct. 4 out of 7, or 4.5, because subclass is different.
There you go.
Are different between nautilus and a squid. And as Dustin points out, there are mind flayers in Final Fantasy 1 because they ran out of letters to write mind flayer that exist in Final Fantasy.
What were they? And then what were weren't there also Sahagin because
they had Sahagin because they needed one more letter to put the U for Sahagin.
Yeah.
That's correct. Also, they have a lot of things that were in Final Fantasy that were blatantly taken from Dungeons & Dragons, but that's okay. Alright, so, it looks like we'll be doing a Battlezoo Ancestry. We'll have a vote. There's not even allowed to be enough for the vast amount of ancestries that have been done in
So
Battlezoo.
we'll need to narrow it down, but we do know one of the ones that needs to be on the list because a person actually
We'll need
put
to
that in there.
narrow it down, so we may need to do multiple rounds of polling where we first ask if someone wants one of the classic creatures, one of the living legends, or one of the titans.
That's true, because then we can narrow it by book first.
And then once we've just narrowed it by book, we can like almost fit in all of one book. I think they give us 10 things for the vote. So we'll figure it out. On the in-between episodes. Thank you for joining us, everybody. Let me give you some XP right before we go.
So I think it is likely that we won't be here on...
Oh, let me not, because I can't get onto that. So we will probably not be there on Saturday, folks. But it's possible that we will, but assume that we won't. And that means the Saturday episode that we have queued up for everybody is going to show up on Saturday the 3rd in all likelihood.
But then
however,
the 30th
Tuesday the 30th is going to be the episode we are figuring out on Battlezoo Ancestry.
Happy holidays to you,
Happy holidays to everyone. Happy upcoming holidays. Happy previous holidays if you were a Hanukkah or any of the other ones that have already ended. And Happy New Year. I hope that everyone's 2026 is better than our 2025s have been, because, well, I mean, I'm happy for you if you actually had a great 2025 and you're like, this is one of the best years in a while, I guess. But for a lot of us, we're hoping 2026 is going to be better.